headlines. The Korean government vows to make full use of its free trade agreements and support smaller companies with innovative ideas in its 2015 policy briefing to the president. The Bank of Korea cuts its growth and inflation forecast for this year, but holds the key rate steady, citing its firm conviction in a sustained recovery. And in the aftermath of the Paris terror attack, French authorities say over 50 people have been arrested for hate speech defending terrorism. Meanwhile, Charlie Hebdo's first edition since the attack sells out within minutes. Hello and welcome to ARIRANG News. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I am Kang Tae-ri. Korea's economy-related ministries and agencies presented their action plans for this year to President Park Geun-hye. Their pledge is to support the country's SMEs and startups with needed funds and so-called creative economy centers. Our Song Ji-sun has the details.
Innovation and entrepreneurship are the keywords for 2015. 5 government ministries and organizations in charge of science, technologies, and industries put together a blueprint on Thursday to turn Korea into a vibrant creative economy. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning, the Trade Ministry, the Small and Medium Business Administration, and the nation's finance and communications regulators all vowed to follow up with action plans to promote entrepreneurship needed to turn ideas into businesses.
We'll create a dynamic economy where creativity thrives and new businesses are born and grow. The first step is to set up an organic ecosystem conducive to an innovative economy.
One of the government's top projects this year is setting up innovative creative economy centers in 17 industrial sites by June. Each center will specialize in one specific industry based on the strength and characteristics of the local area. One-stop services will be provided at these centers for startups seeking funds, partners, distribution channels, and clients. Seoul is also seeking to make better use of its free trade agreements with other countries to boost growth. The government wants to help companies, especially small and medium-sized businesses, make better use of recently agreed free trade deals, and in particular, the one with China. Seoul will launch a consolidated information platform and set up a China desk, a one-stop service for exporters seeking advice on expanding their outbound shipments. The government is aiming to lock $600 billion in exports and attract $20 billion in foreign direct investment this year, to become an FTA hub and business center for the East Asia region. The government is vying to make collaborative efforts across its ministry so that the Korean economy can take another leap forward this year. If things work out as policymakers plan, ordinary Koreans will feel their society is more innovative and that their lives are getting better by the end of this year. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has reiterated his hopes for a summit with the South Korean President Park Geun-hye. This came during a meeting with the Korean lawmakers in Tokyo for a 3-day visit. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is aiming to make this year the year for improving relations with South Korea. Meeting a South Korean parliamentary delegation on Thursday, Abe addressed the current tasks between the two countries, but said such hurdles make dialogue even more important. The Japanese leader said he is always open to talks and expressed hopes to improve ties with Korea this year, which marks the 50th anniversary of diplomatic ties. Abe said he will work with President Park Geun-hye for bilateral ties and cooperation. The two leaders have yet to hold a summit as President Park has been adamant that she will not meet one-on-one with Abe until he apologizes for Tokyo's wartime atrocities. She had reiterated the preconditions for a summit during her New Year's press conference.
위안부 피해자 할머니들의 경우에는 그분들이 연세가 상당히 높으셔서 이게 조기에 어떤 그 해결책이 나오지 않으면은 영구 미제로 빠질 수가 있다.
Bilateral ties between South Korea and Japan are at a historic low, mainly due to Abe's repeated denial of Tokyo's historical wrongdoings. 9 South Korean lawmakers are currently on a 3-day visit to Tokyo seeking a breakthrough. Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party General Council Chairman Toshihiro Nikai is expected to lead a 1,000-member delegation to South Korea next month. The question now is whether the parliamentary diplomacy will be enough to break the ice between the two neighbors. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Rival party leaders and floor leaders held their first gathering of this year on this Thursday. They agreed to launch a special committee on political reform next month, and that will deal with redrawing Korea's electoral districts to rebalance constituencies among legislators. They also agreed to pass a long-pending anti-corruption bill in the plenary session next month, but they failed to advance talks on forming a special committee on revising the Constitution. Korea's central bank cut its growth outlook for this year to 3.4% today, citing the sluggish fourth quarter growth last year. But the central bank kept its key rate steady, saying the current 2% rate is accommodative enough to support growth. Shin Se-min has the details.
The Bank of Korea on Thursday cut its growth outlook for the Korean economy this year by 0.5 percentage point to 3.4%. The central bank governor said the downgrade is largely due to weak economic performance in the fourth quarter of last year.
The lower than expected fourth quarter growth came largely from a fall in government spending due to a lack of tax revenue and sluggish exports of intermediary goods.
Experts also point out structural problems that are hurting the country's growth potential. They say the country's snowballing household debt that already stands at roughly $920 billion may dent domestic demand. And as the government focuses on structural reforms to pull the economy out of its low-growth rut rather than short-term measures, the BOK kept its key rate unchanged at 2% this month. It's continuing its wait-and-see approach for a third straight month following 2 rate cuts in the second half of last year. But market expectations are still building over another rate cut sometime in February or March.
If the economy continues to perform below expectations, then there's a higher chance that the BOK will change its stance in setting the base rate.
The central bank, however, expects private spending to pick up gradually towards the end of this year, thanks to the falling global oil prices and the economic recovery in the U.S. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
6 out of 10 women in their 40s and 50s in Korea are now back in the working world here in Korea. A noticeable improvement, many would say, compared to the past. But if you look at this trend a little closely, it may not be all good news. Our Kim Ji-yeon explains why.
More women in their 40s and 50s are returning to the workforce. In fact, Statistics Korea says the employment rate for this group was at its highest in 15 years in December. The employment rate for women in their 40s stood at over 65%, up 0.6 percentage points from the same month the previous year. The employment rate for women in their 50s was near 61%. That means approximately 6 out of 10 middle-aged women in Korea have a job. This comes amid a drop in the employment rate for men in the same age group. Some say the increase in the female employment rate for this group should be viewed as somewhat positive, arguing the government's efforts to encourage companies to hire more flexible part-timers have borne fruit. A flexible part-timer is someone who works for the same pay and benefits as an employee engaged to work full-time, but works in the morning or afternoon for 4 hours a day. Others say things aren't as rosy as they look, saying the kinds of jobs these women have may not be of high quality and offer low job security and wages. They also point to a dismal economic situation that has prompted women to work because their households are facing an uncertain retirement because of a decrease in household income. Real wage increases have remained in the 0% range for 2 straight quarters, leading up to the July to September period of last year. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics has released a smartphone in India that runs on its own Tizen operating system. The Z1 is the company's first non-Android smartphone. Equipped with a 4-inch display and a simplified user interface, the Z1 costs just over $90. And LG Electronics, meanwhile, is releasing its latest G Flex 2 smartphone in Korea, in its home country, at the end of this month. This is the model that's won high praise at this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. If you are a K-pop fan, you may want to check out this place. One of Korea's largest talent agencies, SM Entertainment, has just opened a multicultural complex where you can get the ultimate K-pop experience. You can even watch holograms of your favorite artist singing and dancing right in front of you. Connie Lee, that is, has the story.
In Seoul's trendy Gangnam district, there's a new cultural complex where you can soak up the full K-pop experience. It's called SM Town at COEX Artium. Take a look inside. Built by one of Korea's biggest talent agencies, SM Entertainment, this 6-story multicultural space cost about $23 million. For the opening ceremony, K-pop stars like EXO, Girls' Generation, and Super Junior lined the red carpet, with the fans clearly excited to get even a brief glimpse of them. The center boasts some high-tech features like a touchscreen jukebox and items from SM artists themselves.
I believe it's time to show our content in a new way to the world, with our unique entertainment space.
And the highlight of this complex may be its state-of-the-art hologram stage, Korea's first. Called School Oz, this hologram musical premiered on Wednesday, starring SM artists on huge displays, covering the audience with 270 degrees of visuals.
There was a lot of preparation for this hologram musical. I had to put a lot more effort into how I acted, so it goes well with the hologram effects.
The complex is topped off with a souvenir shop, a cafe, and studios where you can actually make a music video or record an album. But if you're not ready for that yet, you can receive vocal training from actual SM staff members. Whether you're ready for the limelight or not, this new cultural complex is sure to attract the K-pop fans from all over the world to Korea. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
With so many smartphones and smart screens, so much technology embedded in our daily lives these days, media art has become more relevant. Our Imuni takes a look at how media art is evolving and reaching all aspects of our lives.
We live in an era where there are more television screens than people, more lights to illuminate the dark. So it's no surprise that the art community has responded, using today's technology to produce media art. And though we've progressed, one age-old feud has remained: the complicated political relationship between Korea, China, and Japan. But for many, art holds the ability to heal, and when paired with soft power, the idea of attracting and persuading relations rather than forcing, a beacon of hope is born. But how can a creation of the imagination lead to peace?
In the many genres of art, media art is an especially valuable and relevant tool for us to voice our opinions. This exhibition was put together by 3 curators and features the work of 10 artists from Korea, China, and Japan. If you take a look at the works, you'll see that there's definitely a difference between the 3 countries. And while the subject matter may be similar, Chinese artists are very direct in delivery, while Japanese artists take a more abstract approach, and Korean artists sit somewhere in the middle. Artist Miao Xiaochung used computer graphics to make animations for his large projection screen piece. You'll notice there are Asian-themed images skillfully mixed with ideas from Western culture, the result of a fusion work coming from a very balanced point of view that suggests a new, positive image of Asia. In the 21st century, we are at a paradigm shift, and some recurring keywords are diversity, global mobility, and convergence. Media art is progressing at such a rapid pace and is spreading like wildfire throughout the world, so the gap between the artists and the audience is shrinking. In fact, the two are basically converging. Right now, we're seeing a lot of projector use, but later we might see more of OLED screens or even portable technology like smart pads, all of which can be used in media art. 3D printers are another big source of potential that will surely become more incorporated and open many doors to new possibilities. The Industrial Revolution originated in the West, but the digital age is being led by the East. The presence of so many technology facilities and plants in Korea and Japan means that digital media art won't be far, with many valuable opportunities to seize available here in Asia.
Im Yoon-hee, ARIRANG News.
Authorities in France have arrested over 54 people, that is, for allegedly defending last week's terror attacks that claimed 20 lives. For more, Paul E. is joining us from the News Center. Paul, the people of France are still reeling from this series of shocking attacks, but what exactly triggered this latest crackdown?
Well, the French government on Wednesday ordered prosecutors around the country to clamp down on hate speech, anti-Semitism, and those who voice support for acts of terrorism. Comedian Diodana Mbala was one of those detained on potential charges of glorifying terrorism in a post he made on the social network Facebook. The arrests come as security personnel remain on high alert at over 300 locations in and around Paris. Many local residents said rallies of solidarity around the world gave them strength to move forward.
What happened Sunday really gave us all strength to fight and to not be defeated by what happened. Because what happened should serve as a lesson, we should rise from it. And honestly, I'm proud to see this, and it makes me feel better.
Meanwhile, mourners continue to visit and pay tribute at the memorial site outside Charlie Hebdo's office. Demand for the first issue of the French satirical magazine since last Wednesday's deadly attack has been soaring, with millions of more copies being printed. Leading Islamic scholars and Muslim leaders have condemned the cover featuring the Prophet Muhammad, raising fears that it may incite further violence.
Now let's move on to the United States. The Republican-led House of Representatives has voted to overturn large parts of President Barack Obama's immigration policies. This move jeopardizes the temporary relief to millions of undocumented workers in America who would otherwise be deported. What's been the response from the White House?
Well, following Wednesday's vote on Capitol Hill, the White House described the legislation as merely political theater and vowed to veto the amendments through executive action. Republican leaders shot back, accusing President Obama of overreaching his authority. This as Democratic lawmakers, labor unions, and civil rights groups are criticizing the challenge, the most comprehensive immigration reform efforts in over 20 years. Our Kim Hyun-bin has more.
A new clash between the House of Representatives and the White House has cast doubt over funding for the Department of Homeland Security. The U.S. House of Representatives has overturned President Obama's immigration legislation by passing 5 amendments attached to the Homeland Security budget. The department's funding is set to expire at the end of next month. The House voted for the legislation, which provides roughly $40 billion to fund the department for the rest of the year. This money will also go into strengthening border security and counterterrorism. To that legislation, the House attached amendments that will undo actions backed by an executive order issued by Obama in November, providing temporary deportation relief and offering work permits to some 4 million illegal immigrants. Another amendment that was passed will cancel legislation the Obama administration passed in 2012 that has provided work permits and deferred deportation actions for more than 600,000 immigrants who arrived in the U.S. illegally as children. The legislation will now be sent to the Senate, where Republicans, who have 54 seats, will have to gather a 60-vote majority to pass it. And even if the bill passes the Senate, the White House says the president will veto it. Democratic leaders say the Republican provisions will not only hurt immigrant families, but also hurt the Republican Party in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
And turning to Japan now, Paul, consumer confidence in the service sector inched up in the month of December, showing a glimmer of hope in an otherwise sluggish economy. There's still a lot of downward pressure on consumer spending in Japan these days. What are some of those factors?
Well, Japanese households are grappling with a painful tax hike, stagnant wages, and the falling yen boosting import prices. This is some of the many reasons why people are choosing to save rather than spend their cash. On the other hand, a survey of Japanese retail and service workers said they were more confident in the economy in December from a month earlier due to an influx of foreign visitors. The data released on Tuesday marks the first rise in 5 months, but it's still below the boom or bust threshold of 50. Many of these so-called economy watchers believe that a pickup in tourism will help generate business in 2015. Meanwhile, the latest earnings announcements paint a mixed picture of Japan's retail landscape. The nation's biggest retail group, Aeon, suffered a near 50% drop in operating profit in the 9 months through last November. This as industrial machinery orders showed a weakening capital spending.
And finally, in Australia, the fast food giant McDonald's is undergoing a transformation with a new look and new attitude to capture a new generation of customers. And I hear the key here is to look less like McDonald's.
That's right. Well, say goodbye to those golden arches and drive-through windows. McDonald's is trying out a new trendy-looking cafe in Sydney that offers a wider selection of menus from Chipotle pulled pork to brown rice salads. The company described the cafe as an experiment to gauge customer feedback, but says it has no plans to roll out the new design nationwide. Market experts say it's part of a greater transition that McDonald's is facing across the globe.
That's been driven partially by the push towards healthy foods. Obesity is obviously in an epidemic. Sodas, sugary drinks, there's a big backlash against them globally. So I think McDonald's has taken a broader look at the world and gone, well, we're in the breakfast, lunch and dinner business, so we have to look at how we fulfill that niche.
McDonald's is facing tough competition from so-called fast casual chains that offer healthier food choices and services that focus on corporate social responsibility. However, it's still Australia's most popular fast food restaurant, followed by Subway and KFC. Chetty?
All right, Paul, let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for those stories, and we'll see you again in Primetime News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather forecast. It was a warm winter day under clear skies for most regions. However, sporadic showers are hitting the eastern coast of both Gyeongsang-do provinces. And it looks like more showers are in store through tomorrow. This will begin in the central regions before spreading to other areas, dropping less than 5 millimeters. We also have snow expected. About a centimeter will cover Seoul, while up to 3 centimeters is expected for parts of the Gangwon-do and Chungcheongbuk-do provinces. As for tomorrow, we will start off the morning under warm winter weather. However, snow or showers will pull down numbers back to the seasonal averages. And do keep in mind that strong winds could make things feel slightly colder than the actual numbers. On to Friday's readings. Seoul starts off the day at -1 before reaching 4 in the afternoon. Daegu hits 8, Busan reaches 11. On to other regions. Jeju makes it to 10, Dokdo hits 7, Mount Kumgang dips to -4. Those are the updates I have for you now, and let's take a look at the international weather.
And that does it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.